I'm going to take a deep breath because this is a really magical moment for me. Anyone that's listening to this, I was introduced to Maureen Spielman. Is that how I say it? Yeah. Only a few weeks ago by a really dear friend of both of us, Joe Agazi, who you will also hear me talking to. So it's been a wonderful introduction, and Maureen is multifaceted. I hope that's okay me saying that. She has the most beautiful podcast, which I recommend that you look at, which is called Mystical Sisterhood. Isn't that right? Have I got that right? Good. And she's also the most remarkable coach. But what I love doing is asking our guests to, in their own words, because I think that's where the passion comes from. I would love you to tell us a little bit about what it is you do. And then we're going to give you a little bit of a heads up. So carry on listening. We're going to talk about the meaning that comes out of some of the toughest times that we have in our lives. And an illness or a diagnosis or prognosis can come. And it can actually uniquely it can become the most extraordinary gift. So first of all, welcome. Thank you very much for spending time with me. And I would love you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, I am sitting here thinking how I wish there was a resource like you when I had gone through my life-changing event years ago, and we'll talk about that. But currently, I am a soul care coach, and I have a coaching practice in which I support individuals really, I think, getting to know themselves more deeply, getting to understand what might still be operating from their past and experiences that are holding them back from really enjoying life. I mean, in the most simplest of terms. And I've been working with individuals for the past couple of years, I'd say 2 to 3 years with that. And, you and I met through Mystical Sisterhood, really, when our friend said, I think you'd really enjoy interviewing Catherine. And, I think when I became a coach, I shifted gears. I was a speech language pathologist earlier in my life. And then I had stayed home to raise my 3 children and really didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew that I wasn't having the point of attraction to go back to speech pathology. And so I thought, okay, the coaching just unfolded in front of me and I followed that thread. But on an intuitive hit really during, I would say about 4 years ago or so, 4 to 5 years ago, the name Mystical Sisters first came to my mind. And I thought I knew it was something. I just did. And I cataloged back. Maybe I wrote it down somewhere. But about a year and a half ago, it started coming back to me. So I was doing my coaching and seeing my clients, and all of a sudden, why is it revisiting me? Why is it coming back in my mind? And I knew that it was something, and I knew that it was something I wanted to develop. And so I started to open up to that possibility. And in the summertime last year, I thought it's a podcast. I wanted to be a podcast. And I simply laid out the premise that it was going to be about joy and healing co-occurring in the same space, nothing more fancy than those two big, beautiful things. And that I wanted to interview intuitives, healers, and other courageous individuals. And that was it. And I started to get into action, took a class because I didn't know how to do a podcast. And I started to gather together the people I had met either through my personal healing journey or my coaching, just spectacular people. There's more than I can count. And that is the thing, is that I'll have guests for all of time just because of all the beautiful work being done in the world. But that has really started to unfold since January of this year when I started to publish the podcast. And it's been great fun. And I think I just see it as, let's share the work of all these amazing people as wide and far as I can. I love to do the podcast because I know the questions to ask most of the time, and that's my intuitive nature. But that's where I find myself now. So sort of, straddling this coaching and this podcast and just building a mystical community. Mm-hmm.
I think what I love about what you're doing is I love the idea that there are tribes all over the world who still, when the women, there are various times every month when they actually close themselves off from the men and they spend time in their sisterhood together. Mm. And I think what both of us are doing in different ways, but there are so many similarities, is we're living from a really mystical, sacred abundance and sharing. One of the things I have at the end of my sort of 5 31-day courses is, which I love at the moment, at the end we have a bank. And the reason why I've called it a bank, it's a bank of information. So it's a bank of fantastic practitioners that I personally would absolutely recommend. Yeah. And, you're not paying any more for it. I think there's so much scarcity in the world, thinking and poverty mentality. And there's something, when a woman is really in touch with her female energy, there's such an extraordinary level of abundance. There's enough love. She's not, and you really remind me of that. There isn't this idea that you have to provide everything or I have to provide. It's not I, it's we. And that's so powerful in today's society. I mean, I remember I talked to various people and, they sort of wanted, I mean, maybe I took it wrongly, I didn't hear it, I don't know, but it was as if they wanted to tag me as it. And I'm not. I'm not interested. If I'm the wrong person, I want to be able to, if someone's come my way and I just know I'm the wrong person, I want to be able to kind of go, hey, no, get hold of this wonderful, wonderful woman called Maureen. Yes. So I love intuitively your work. And one of the things you talk about in your really, really beautiful website is connection and clarity. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, you already know this about my work, but it is so possible to get more clarity and connection and a sense of the divine, the sacred, the mystical.
Mm-hmm. I had someone say to me the other day, Catherine, and she said, I don't want to make this sound sort of vanilla. And then she said, but Maureen, you have a way to bridge the mainstream to the mystical. And I think that I guess in my experience, even I've done it in my own sometimes. It's like, here we've got mainstream and here we have mystical. But I guess, are we coming into a time where it's bridging more? And I think it's such a beautiful thing. I wanted to say, I think in my quest for this, I was saying to you right before we recorded, this idea of generosity of spirit and sharing one another with each other. I had to go through some of the scarcity that was occurring within me that even though I knew it was my true nature to be those things, I had some old conditioning that was getting in the way and making me feel like, oh, I had to be guarded in certain ways. And it's this particular year that we're in has had me do some personal work to get through that and realize there is abundance for all, and it's here for me too, and it's here for you, and it's here for all that, everyone. And I just love that more and more we're sharing the messages. And I wanted to say too, like, as I've gone through this kind of like coaching industry right now, and especially in the time of Zoom and accessibility, I don't want to say Zoom, I want to say maybe social media, is that it's this big beautiful thing of interconnectedness, but still I can feel sometimes that there's like the everyone's in their own silos. And I think what's coming to like fruition for me in real time in front of me is like, wait a minute, there's something, like, I love that more people are expressing themselves and they're doing what they're here to do and deliver. However, it feels a little disconnected sometimes. And
Yeah,
so I've just got that on my mind as like, okay, just pay attention to that.
I think that's why I guess I didn't know I was going to say it or even feel it, but I think that's why I'm talking about the I think we've got so much to learn from the ancient ways. I think it's so easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Do you know the origin of that expression?
No.
Oh, it's just incredible because I think it's so relevant to what I could have done in my training, which is so in the mining days in England anyway, the miners would every single day go down to the mines and they would come back absolutely black with soot. And every Friday, the families would have a sort of metal tub in their kitchen, and they would have one bath once a week. And the men, I think this is the wrong way around, but anyway, the men who were the dirtiest would get in first. Then the sons were allowed to get in. Then the little girls were allowed to go in. I have no idea when Mummy went in, but anyway. And then the last one that went in was the baby. So when you were throwing this absolutely filthy water out, you needed to make damn sure that you weren't throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Isn't that wonderful?
A great story, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that the reason why that comes to my mind is that I think that it's a big mistake to throw out some of the ancient ways that were really interconnected with nature. And I think I've just done a video on this actually. I think people will always need people, and these machines are amazing. You know, was it a phone or a, you know, we've got this and we can, you know, type away to each other. But and thank goodness I've met you on Zoom, so I'm very, very grateful. However, we need each other kinesthetically. We need to have our senses triggered in good ways. A lot of healing is actually using the power of our senses.
I think of in-person get-togethers and how my experience with sitting in, it wasn't called women's circles, but sitting in circle that were, you know, created based on an ancient archetype that so many, the spirituality comes in, but a lot of emotional healing occurs in those spaces. And that's, you know, you're making me think of the importance that with the ease of everything being online, and there's such beauty in it. And I love meeting people from around the world. There's nothing like it. And I remind myself, okay, Maureen, maybe it's time to call a circle together or an in-person, or just so there's that balance there too.
Well, I mean, obviously we're not going to say any names, but you know, I had the privilege of being introduced to someone that you know very well. And, you know, I met her sort of, I think maybe on a Wednesday or Thursday. And then I'm not going to get this right, but then I saw her again on Zoom because she's your side of the pond, on a Monday or Tuesday, and in between she'd had a surprise visit from, I think, 5 of you women. And what was absolutely beautiful was to see the impact that you had physically had on her at the, I can't speak for her, but you know, from my understanding, this was one of the worst times of her life, and 5 of you loved her enough to just get on a plane and go and see her. And all I can tell you from a practitioner perspective is the difference between her the first time I met her and after you had been was just,
Wow.
it was wonderful. So, and I think that you know, what we promised we would talk about is, you know, how a diagnosis can actually give us some meaning to our lives that maybe we were missing. So would you like to share a little bit about what happened to you and what meaning you find?
Yeah, I feel like I was diagnosed with breast cancer 5 years ago, and cancer just wasn't something that was part of my experience up until 2 years before that, when my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. And I had always thought, and I know I am to be like pretty forward thinking, maybe open minded person. And I saw my mom going through this, and my grandparents, my grandmother had had cancer and lived in the house, but we were shielded from it. And so I really, when my mom went through it, was the first time I had seen someone going through a diagnosis of cancer and being in the hospital room and all the things. And Catherine, I have to tell you, I thought, well, I got to find some resources for this. And I started to tune into things that were very, I'm going to say, can be thought of as polarizing, extreme, saying all the things that are not right about the medicines and the treatment she was getting. And she passed away about 9 months later. And I took all of this on, and I thought, look, that's the truth. That's the truth. And lo and behold, about 20 months later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I really had to face that, because when it came to choosing my own treatment, and I had 3 kids at home, probably, I don't know at the time, 12, 14, 16. I thought, well, what do you decide, Maureen? And I had the luxury of not being in the position of needing to make decisions very quickly. And a lot of people are in that situation, and that's difficult. And I wasn't. And the surgeons were on vacation. It was summertime, and I live in Chicago, and I would sit on the back porch in the warmth of the summer and sit. And I started to pay attention to my intuition. And I started to read things that informed me about my intuition. And I think the first resources I started to pull together, I was thinking about it before today, were things like Louise Hay. This is what started to come into my field, were things that were about changing your thoughts or how you thought about it, or it was a beautiful work, but like a Joe Dispenza, but a lot about your thoughts, your thoughts, your thoughts. And it was good because during the time I didn't have a basis of anything else. So if I could start to believe my cells are healthy and I could envision it, and it felt very comforting to me. And at the same time, I was leaning into my intuition, and I started to lean into healers or intuitives that I knew. And I turned to them more. And people would think it was crazy, but if I had my Western medicine team, and I had a mastectomy surgery, and they said chemo, and I'd go to my medium channeler woman I know, and I'd say, what do you think? What are the guides saying? So I started to, oh, go get acupuncture. And I began to call in the things that made sense to me. And I didn't know, even for acupuncture, I had never done it before. Sometimes you can't tell how you're benefiting from that in the moment, but I thought, if I
Definitely
can,
not.
yeah. And I was doing chemotherapy, and I said, um, let's pull that in. If anything can make me feel better, I'm going to try to access it. But it was a beautiful time, I think, of growth and sitting a lot and sitting with myself. And sometimes it makes me cry a little, but I went through a really difficult time. It was a very felt like I was just, kind of being torn down and really getting in touch with my emotions and um, feeling like it was one of the hardest times of my life. Absolutely. And sometimes I see people, Catherine, and we all handle it in different ways. That will put their nose down and I always say, in America we say like nose to the grindstone, but put it down and just get through. And I don't know why or how or what happened, but I used it as an opportunity to look within and see what was there for me. And I had stayed home to raise the kids, and I started to think about, well, what do you want? Would you like to, that coaching program, you want to start going along a new path? And I began to not only open myself to a lot of new teachings, but also claim some new things for myself. I hadn't worked for many years. I had lost my identity. And I had that beautiful job of being a stay-at-home mother, but I don't know if that was in my heart. Like I saw the importance and significance of it. So there was so much in there that I never had really given myself. And I did, but it felt like I wanted to bring something new to life for myself. And it was a beautiful path, really. It was painful going through it, but it started the coaching, and I loved a book during my healing called Radical Remission. And I picked it up, and it was Kelly Turner's book, and she had studied 1,500 people from around the world who were statistically unlikely to heal from cancer, yet did. And it was a book of hope, and it was a book of inspiration. And I loved it so much that I looked into becoming a coach and going out to the Omega Institute, which is in New York State and in the United States, and trained for a week. And in the end, I didn't end up working right in that field and staying with it, but they were all stepping stones. And I just kept on opening myself up. And because I started to bring in a new language, I could begin to see that things were put in my path for a reason. And that was certainly never a language or a concept that I understood before that time. So that's some of my, story during that time 4 or 5 years ago.
I love hearing about this sort of, it's almost like a relay race. You think you're going to go along that pathway and somehow there's a diversion, but it's all been a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I love that hope came to you. And I think that I think cancer is, I mean, from my perspective, when I was first qualified, 1 in 10 people would get cancer. Mm-hmm. And now it's 1 in 2. And yeah. And one of the things I love about the training that I had, and I think you'll agree maybe with what you've just said, I'm not going to be able to help someone until I really look at the problems. Mm-hmm. But we were taught the problems were potential, just kind of lying dormant. And, one of the things that I think will change and is changing is that the world of cancer, and I'm going to say something quite controversial, which I don't on the whole, but it's a big machine I'm going to use a neutral word. It's a big machine that it's almost like an organism in itself, where the light of truth is not necessarily immediately available. And we all have the opportunity, those of us that have had cancers and are okay, and we're more than okay, we're really thriving. I think we have, which is quite a tricky thing to say, I can say it for myself, I feel like I have the moral obligation to live this side of hope when it comes to cancer. And I want to choose to have the moral obligation to show people that there are solutions out there, every which way, not just for cancer, but for all the issues that we have, because we're alive. If we don't have problems, we're not alive.
Yeah.
And our world is being shaken. While you and I are sitting here right now, our world is being absolutely shaken to its core at the moment. And in one of the groups that I take, everyone wanted to go off piece yesterday. And they wanted to talk about some of the political situations going on right now. And there was a very, very wise woman. She's so mystical and sacred. She'd actually be quite cross if she heard me saying that, because she's so mystical and divine that she is very ordinary and is absolutely will not really have anybody say their experience of her. So I'm quite glad that she's not really quite here in the room. But she just said, I am not discussing the politics of this. I am not discussing the sides of this. What I am going to discuss is right now, we need to love one another. We need to stop getting into these opinions and judgments. Yeah. And in a sort of way, the thing that I come across, and I hope to goodness you didn't, but I have a feeling you might have. When you have cancer, there is a lot of bullying and shaming that goes on. Rather than this is an opportunity to feel often what you haven't been able to feel before, uncover and unravel the gifts that your own body is attempting to give you. And it's just going, hello, hello, hello. So you're a richer practitioner for having gone through those experiences. I often say to people, yes, I've gone through 9 years of training and blah, 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 blah. But what people really get from me is actually the surgeries I've had and the cancers I've had and the strokes I've had. They get someone who's found the power of being a woman.
I think that even when you came into my world, I think when I know one of the opportunities that was right in front of me when I went through everything was like, Maureen, do you believe your body can heal? Do you believe that? And it was the first time I had to really entertain that question. And so I would read the things and I would say like, oh, because I've read this. Yeah, yes, I do. But it's in my subconscious or it's in my unconscious. Do you believe that? Because that's not something I grew up with. I think maybe some, of like some spirituality or religions actually do have the piece that says you can heal, that you are your healer. I didn't have that basis or anything. And so I went through everything, and then with our, my recent friend who is going through a significant diagnosis, the question comes back into my fore. And it was such a gift because I hadn't really rounded out that my answer to that question. And it allowed me to dig a little deeper and believe, yes, because I always looked at someone like you doing the work that you did, like, oh my gosh, how does she hold such a high vibration for healing? And because I have another friend, she reads the Akashic records. She's just such a beautiful soul, and she just holds the vibration. It's like there's not a question. And I've always sat there like, how does she do that? And this time around, it made me look inside again and really, I think I revisited even your writings, or for the first time read your work, and something became awakened within me. Yes, it's not only possible, it's here for us. And so, I may be still working with that somewhat, but I'm on a journey, and I love that journey of being invited to that. I can have my own answer to that. That's really powerful.
I think, Maureen, what's so what is so sacred and humbling about this journey is that it becomes kind of richer and richer and richer. Doesn't necessarily become easier, but it comes richer and richer. And I thought that healing represented, give the healer a problem, and it will be healed, it'll be changed, and I never realized that healing is letting go of the conditions that we put on things. And once I realized that I'm capable of accessing extraordinary levels of power and love and healing on the one hand, and on the other, I have absolutely no control whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the freedom of knowing how much we can impact situations in all sorts of ways that get sort of richer, better, whatever the words are. Mm-hmm. And also knowing, like you said earlier, you're sort of, you're living on one hand in your humanity, and you're also in your sacred. And this really impacted me the other day, because almost certainly I have to have some more surgery. And part of the reason why I'm not kind of talking about it yet is because I kind of know what's going to come at me, and I need to just be prepared. Because one of the things that will come at me is, but haven't you tried this healer? Or haven't you done this? Or haven't you done that? And I was just praying about it the other day, and I thought, this is fascinating, this whole concept of healing, because the greatest shaman in the world regularly go through what the West considers to be absolutely barbaric rituals, where they will be strung up, hoisted on a tree, starving, with no water, no whatever, and they go to the brink of death. And then they come back, and then they'll dance for 2 days. As high as a kite on just mystical and the sacred. And I just thought, you know, for whatever reasons, my life has the privilege
Mhm.
of these extraordinary rituals.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's how whole I am.
Mm.
And it's okay for people to come to me and go, but you're a practitioner, haven't you healed yourself yet?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
you know, but by the grace of modern medicine, I have so much metal work inside me that
Mhm.
has sell-by dates.
Mhm.
I'm alive because of scaffolding, and it
Mhm.
needs tinkering with regularly.
Mhm.
And I live by prayer, which in itself is my way of restoring and healing myself every single day when I have completely foreign bits in me.
Mhm.
But I need to be humble in the face of the consequences of actually having had so many miracles my entire life.
Mm.
So
I love that.
when I'm given the privilege of working with someone, as you are, I no longer have this awful pressure of, I mean, in fact, for me personally, I will not allow anybody to tell me that I'm a healer, because
Mhm.
I'm not. There is healing out there and
Mhm.
we can access it. But if people think it is about me and I disappear, where does that leave them?
Oh,
We
I agree. Yeah.
all have the capacity, don't we, to
Mm.
just actually go unconditionally. How can we serve
Mm.
ourselves and another person? Can I be in beside the fire pit with them and go, okay, what's going on here really?
Yeah. I love that. Hmm. And it makes me think of that. If I know something that's going to benefit you, where I am now, I want to be able to share that, where conditioning has gotten in the way in my past of being, outspoken. Because I was going to say, with the woman in your group, that was courageous of her to say. It really was that
She
that wasn't, she couldn't be in her peaceful place amidst it all. And I had a friend say similarly to me the other night. She was with another friend, and she courageously said, I don't ingest these things that are out there that everyone else is ingesting. And I said, that's a courageous step of kind of bearing your values and principles and then spreading your light. I always feel like it's I mean, anyone who's been, I want to say come before me, but like yourself or anyone in my world that's willing to say something that's so crystal clear, or it seems I want to call it the truth, but everyone has their own truth. It allows me, I mean, I know that's cliche and it's said a lot, you shine your light, I can shine mine, but there's nothing more true.
Yeah. I mean, what we ended up talking about yesterday was, if you're willing to take away your opinions and your judgments,
Mm.
and you're willing to do the work that we can do within ourselves,
Mm.
then we are not powerless over the horrors that we are seeing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We are not.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can come through your horrors, and I can come through my horrors,
Mm-hmm.
and we can come through the next layer of horrors
Mm-hmm.
that will come into our lives.
Yeah.
And it isn't because we're not healed, and it isn't because we failed. I mean, while we've been doing this podcast, we have had the most unbelievable storm. I'm absolutely amazed that you didn't actually say to me, I can't hear anything you're saying. I mean, it absolutely, I mean, rain like this country rains, but I mean, rain like, I mean,
Wow.
I was but I was putting up the volume because I was like this. So life constantly gives us the opportunity to develop more of our potential.
Yeah, and what you just said about what's happening at the world at large reminded me when I shared the story of my mother and then myself, is that I found myself where I was, and hey, you got some judgment to let go of here, of the rightness or wrongness. And I really felt like I had always, in this very surface way, thought, oh, I tend to be more of a holistic person. It's what I'm drawn to. And so then, well, geez, some of the interventions that are being suggested don't seem to go along with that. And then I said, what if you tore down, if you were willing to release anything that you thought you were, good or bad, or any kind of, anything you put on that, that might be a wise thing for you to do, so you can begin to decide what's best for right now. So in that judgment, we know it's reflective of the self-judgment I had, and all the things. And those are the things that have become the voices within that judged myself, that's been part of the journey. And it's so, yeah, I love that part of it, and that willingness to, I mean, at some point I love, and I know you do too, because you have that about you, but yes, I have to look at myself and laugh sometimes too. Just to even at the parts where I'm still growing and learning and changing. And I love how you just mentioned that humble part too, and be humble.
I'm going to oh yeah, I need to keep my eye on time.
Oh yes.
Someone I know and love very dearly, he's one of my oldest friends. He's living very, very, very successfully and amazingly with motor neurone. And he's in quite a stressful situation at the moment. And one of the things I've noticed that he has every now and again is a Coca-Cola, which most practitioners kind of go,
Yes.
anyway, someone who had just met me noticed that I had bought some Coca-Cola for when he comes. And they immediately kind of put their hands sort of slightly on their hips, and they were kind of going, Catherine, but you're a practitioner. I mean, it's really bad for him. And I said, well, it depends which way you look at it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right now, that's what I felt led to do. Because he's not going to not have it. So I might as well actually have the one thing that at the moment is comforting him. So what? Every single thing that we eat or drink is medicine. And yes, it can be poisonous medicine, but poison is used by shaman and medicine people all over the world. So it's like we really have to be careful about, I mean, what I love about my present circumstances and life is stop judging, Catherine Rold. Stop it. Get out of the way. Stop it. Stop being so controlling, meddling, fixing. Just get out of the way. Which I mean, I'm gentle about it. I constantly find myself just, and I go, come on, come on. So,
yes, the insidious ways. You just said it 10 minutes ago. Trust, faith, prayer. Yes. And that's our humanness, our humanity.
yeah. And I think that's what's so powerful about sharing these conversations, because the burden of thinking that you have to be something is nonsense. We're let's go back just for a second and end with this. You felt strongly to start doing podcasts aimed at the mystical sisterhood.
Mhm.
Well, in a way, what I think of is we have the privilege of discovering how human we are. And then we can discover the mystical and the miraculous and the magical and the real power that can come through our humanity.
Love that. Thank you.
Darling Maureen, it's been so lovely spending time with you, and please will you come back again and talk to us, have a
Absolutely.
conversation with us.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled by all the work that you're doing, Catherine, and just so inspired and grateful to know you.
Thank you. And we're gonna, for anyone who's watching this, we'll give all your details at the end of this.
Okay. It's been a pleasure. Have a cozy night.
Thank you. In this store.